Imagine waking up to discover the thing traditional bankers have whispered about for years. XRP institutional takeover just jumped from rumor to headline straight overnight. And the craziest part is that the headline might barely even scratch the surface of what is coming next. So here is the deal, right? Late last night, while most of crypto Twitter was arguing about meme coin emojis, and I was kind of just doom scrolling the newsfeed, and I nearly spilled my coffee at 3 a.m. when I read it. Ripple acquires Hidden Road for $1.25 billion. Now, my first thought was, wait, Hidden Road, the prime brokerage that quietly settles trillions every year for big money players who don't even flinch at even 8-figure kind of wire transfers. And yeah, it was that Hidden Road. And just like that, the XRP ledger suddenly found itself staring at a potential 3 trillion, that's 3 trillion with a T, traffic jam. But in a really good way. Now, of course, this might just shock you, but I am not a financial advisor, right? Nothing in this video is financial advice. And cryptocurrencies, of course, are highly volatile, and you could lose all of the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. Your investments, of course, are entirely your responsibility, and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube, of course, are liable for any losses. And today's video, of course, guys, is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Now, if you've been hanging around the channel for a while, you already know how obsessed I am with spotting these kind of wild, little weird puzzle pieces that mainstream analysts kind of just brush to one side. Now, this Hidden Road acquisition is not new. It's been around for a few weeks at this point. But it is that kind of puzzle piece that everyone kind of lost under the couch cushions. And I want to see exactly how it kind of snapped into the broader XRP picture, because if Grok, that's Elon's resident AI prankster, is anywhere close with its price predictions, well, we might actually be looking at a roller coaster climb from just over $2 to, brace yourself, double digits faster than my cat can knock over a Ledger Nano on the countertop. So you got to picture this, right? Hidden Road's clients, they move around $3 trillion a year. Now there's a kind of 3, that's a 3 followed by 12 zeros for anyone who is curious about it, right? So even if, half of that ends up settling through Ripple's kind of shiny new stablecoin, RLUSD, on the XRPL, well, transaction fees, they get paid in XRP. So every single fee is a kind of teeny tiny puff of smoke, but XRP, it's going to be burned forever. So supply, it does actually nudge downwards, right? So let's level with each other here, right? Burning 100,000 XRP a year, it sounds flashy until you remember that the total supply hovers around 58 billion. So on a kind of percentage chart, that's basically an ant kind of sneezing during a hurricane. And so that makes us ask the question, why should we care? Why should you care? And you got to ask yourself. Because sometimes the biggest kind of waves, they don't come from the tide going out, right? They actually come from the moon pulling water upwards. So the translation here is that demand, right? Institutional demand, exactly. Now, when Hidden Road's kind of traders, they realized that their post-trade settlements can close in seconds on XRPL instead of crawling through the dusty pipes of Swift, well, we're going to need XRP the way that grandma needs her morning crossword. And institutional traders, they rarely buy a single token. They look to buy, they're kind of filling swimming pools. But let's go ahead and just rewind here for a second and talk about the challenge that I bumped into while researching this whole saga. Now, crypto space is crammed with wild claims, right? You've seen them. $500 XRP tomorrow, $10,000 XRP if the moon aligns. It's kind of like the digital version of yelling free pizza in Times Square. Now, everybody shows up. Nobody actually gets a slice. And by the way, guys, I'm actually heading over to New York in a couple of days, so maybe I'll give that one a try. But here is my challenge, right? Separate the hype, from substance without becoming that kind of cranky tinfoil hat skeptic who thinks that every announcement is a marketing stunt. Now you got to enter my late night coffee binge with Grok here. Now, Grok, if you haven't tried it yet, it's kind of like having a genius buddy who reads the entire internet and still somehow manages to slip in a dad joke mid-sentence. I try to do the same. I'm not sure I do it very well in these videos, but I do try to add a little bit here or there. You can comment down below whether you think it works. Anyway, I asked Grok, I said, all right, buddy, if XRPL suddenly handles 100% of Hidden Road's flows, what's the realistic price ceiling? And Grok spit back a range from $3.50 on the low side to nearly $28 on the high side, and prepared for kind of the wild disclaimers about adoption rates, the network congestion, and the market sentiment, the holy trinity of crypto uncertainty, if you will. Now, that range, it isn't financial advice, of course. You've got to remember the disclaimer at the beginning of the video, all the pop-ups that are coming up, and of course all the disclaimers in the description, because apparently you can't have enough disclaimers according to YouTube, while simultaneously they're willing to take down channels and obviously people's content, but aren't able to actually monitor or moderate even the comment section down below. But that's just my cynical me. Anyway, but let's kind of get grounded in the math here and get back to the kind of Moon Boy fantasies, maybe without the Moon Boy fantasies. Let me break down why those numbers, especially the $28.55 moonshot, aren't as bonkers as they sound. XRP, you've got to think of XRP, in fact, as a kind of fuel of a massive logistics empire then. Right now, RippleNet is kind of like the fleet of delivery drones humming quietly over city kind of rooftops. Pretty solid, pretty reliable, but you don't notice them unless one actually crash lands in your backyard. Now, Hidden Road is the equivalent of UPS deciding to toss its ground trucks and ship 100% of packages via drone. Suddenly, every rooftop is buzzing. The skies kind of get crowded, and guess who's selling the batteries? Exactly. Yet, there is another twist here. RLUSD, Ripple's brand new stablecoin. And even, you can argue, USDC, which obviously has now debuted on the XRPL, and which of course all of these stablecoins will settle the actual dollar values. Now that part, it kind of has me scratching my head at first. If stablecoin does the heavy lifting, why does XRP even matter, right? And here is the aha moment, right? The XRPL, it kind of acts like the ultra-fast runway where each RLUSD kind of takes off. The fees are paid in XRP to keep the runway lights on and control the control tower kind of running, right? But the bigger picture is the kind of airport traffic. The more landing fees that you collect, and obviously because those fees are literally kind of burned, right? That kind of tiny supply reduction becomes a psychological nudge. So it's kind of like seeing just 3 cookies left in the cookie jar then, making you want one more pronto. Now, while I'm on the kind of psychological nudges here, let me talk about the sentiment, right? Crypto, it is not a spreadsheet. It's actually part of a high school popularity contest then, right? Part kind of gladiator arena maybe. Now, the second kind of Bloomberg or CNBC runs a kind of, piece that reads, Ripple closes $1.25 billion deal, institutional flow heads to XRPL. You kind of read better, or you'd better kind of believe that retail investors will FOMO harder than a dog chasing a squirrel on caffeine. Now, history, of course, does sometimes repeat itself. You got to remember December of 2017 when XRP rocketed to $3.84 simply because rumors swirled about bank partnerships. Now that was kind of pre-lawsuit. It was pre-stablecoins. It was pre-everything. So imagine that story today, but with actual transactions and cold, hard revenue receipts. Now, of course, the skeptics in me needed more than an AI prediction and some sentiment theories. So I dug up the numbers on burn mechanics then. Average XRPL transaction fee, that's roughly 0.00001 XRP. You can multiply that by 1 billion operations, estimate kind of Grok mentioned earlier, and you kind of end up at 10,000 XRP. That's not 100,000 XRP then. So, but fees, they tend to spike when the network is a little busier. So jumping, a 100-fold during peak times. So Grok's kind of upper burn estimate actually kind of pans out. Still tiny in the macro supply picture, but remember, tokenomics is only half the math. half narrative, right? Supply shrinking, headlines kind of print themselves faster than maybe ChatGPT can finish your unfinished tweet for you. And narratives, move markets way faster than spreadsheets ever will. Now, of course, we need to sprinkle in a little personal anecdote because apparently people believe that I'm AI and that these are AI videos. And of course they are not. I tried to pick things up and I tried to kind of point out that these are not AI videos and that everything here is real. As much as I would love to be AI, I am not. Anyway, let's get back to the personal anecdotes because nothing beats a bedtime story, right? So 2 years ago, I tried explaining on-chain fees to my dad. Now, he treats Wi-Fi like black magic as it is and still writes checks to pay bills. So I showed him an XRP transaction and how it settles in seconds and costs less than a penny. His response, so why aren't banks using it already? And that simple question is precisely what Ripple's acquisition answers here. Institutions, they finally have a bridge into that world, one that doesn't require rewriting the entire tech stack. Hidden Road, it acts more like an adapter plug that kind of lets your kind of US laptop charge in a kind of quirky European socket without kind of, sparks flying everywhere. But wait, you say, what about regulation? And it's a good point because, the SEC saga, it feels like that kind of clingy ex who kind of texts you at midnight just to remind you that they still exist. Yet, with Ripple expanding into prime brokerage territory, they're effectively signaling confidence that the regulatory quicksand is actually behind them, or at least solidifying. Now, acquiring a FINRA registered broker isn't exactly subtle. It's like kind of planting a flag on top of the K2 and daring regulators to come and blow it over. Does that guarantee smooth sailing? No, but it's a pretty big, powerful move, right? A power play, if you will, and markets adore power moves. All right, let's spice things up then with a quick lightning round of stats that I jotted down during my endless coffee loops. So, Hidden Road's annual volume is $3 trillion. That's 23 times PayPal's 2024 crypto volume. Estimated XRPL transactions, if 100% flows through, well, that's roughly 1 billion operations annually. The burn impact at the current fee rate is 100,000 XRP per year, roughly 0.00017% of the circulating supply. Now, potential fee spikes during heavy loads. Fees can scale upwards by 100x temporarily, which could expand the burn to around 10 million XRP yearly in very extreme stress. Now, current XRP prices, while I obviously script this out, record it and edit and upload it, a good week or so before, because I'm going to New York, is around $2.16, giving us a neat little yardstick for Grok's $3.50 baseline and $28.55 moonshot. You can comment down below what the current price is if you want to kind of roast this pre-record. Now, let's kind of pause for just a moment here because I know that someone in the comments is already going to type something like, bro, even $3.50 is crazy when regulators are breathing down Ripple's neck. And it's fair enough, right? But you got to remember, right? Price doesn't move in a vacuum. Now, in for a single brokerage funneling trillions through the XRPL, analysts will snap all the news onto earnings style valuation models, and price discovery will spiral upwards. Last time the institutional liquidity kind of eyed XRP in a major way, back when MoneyGram flirted with on-demand liquidity, XRP doubled in just 2 months. And that was, during a pretty bearish macro backdrop. And here is another angle. RLUSD itself will likely become the darling among traders seeking a regulated dollar-backed stablecoin that's not tethered, pun intended, to offshore kind of fudge factors. So regulation-friendly stablecoins are kind of like the gluten-free bread at a brunch cafe. And by the way, I'm celiac, so I need gluten-free bread. Now, everyone says that they want it on the principle, but they only actually stick around if it tastes decent, right? So Ripple's kind of track record with kind of central banks and commercial banks mean RLUSD, it won't taste like cardboard, which is pretty good news. And of course, every RLUSD transaction funnels back to the XRPL. So it's the stablecoin Trojan horse that quietly actually drags XRP into boardrooms. And of course, speaking of boardrooms, let's imagine the chain reaction among institutional desks. One prime brokerage flips the XRP switch, and competitors and competition, they will scramble to avoid being late to that particular party. So I've set it on enough kind of fintech kind of roundtables to kind of know executives, they hate two things here, right? Higher fees and being late. Now, you show them a smoother route for post-trade settlement, and they're going to rewrite policy manuals overnight. Okay, let me share a metaphor that I use with a buddy from my university days, right? Now, you got to think of today's global settlement landscape as a massive pothole riddled kind of highway, right? That's still using toll booths from the 1960s. Now, every time a truck rolls through it, someone hands cash to the toll operator, right? It scribbles it on the clipboard and maybe even an email of the receipt 3 days later, right? Ripple's acquisition is kind of like installing an automatic express lane running in parallel, right? Trucks keep their wheels moving, tolls charge automatically, and drivers barely even notice. And here's the kicker. The fee is not only cheaper, but also self-destructs upon collection, hence the XRP burn. So when trucks kind of see that express lane, they're going to swerve over despite the burn rate being kind of numerically tiny. It's psychological. It's faster, plus cheaper, plus a visible reduction in congestion. It equals irresistible. But this wouldn't be a good crypto story without a climax, right? And here's mine. Now, I spent an entire afternoon running mock price scenarios in Excel. I know, right? Wild Saturday. But I fed the variables in, the transaction growth, the fee multipliers under stress, the speculative FOMO multipliers, and yes, even regulatory fines. Right, my conservative estimates kind of land XRP around $4.20 by Q2 2026. Now, my moderate scenario where adoption snowballs and the brokerage piggyback, for at least 4 other kind of brokerages and their piggybacks, and $11. And my kind of pop the champagne, retire early scenario, this is backed by global crypto bull mania and Bitcoin smashing 200K. Now that's Grok's $28 prediction. But guess what single biggest kind of determinant turned out to be? And no, it's not the burn rate. It was sentiment, raw, human. I don't want to miss this train sentiment. And here is where you guys come in. Now, we run one of the most curious, no BS communities in crypto. And guess what? It's entirely free. And if you want deeper breakdowns, live Q&As, and my infamous late night chart rants, why don't you hop into our educational Discord server? The invite link is chilling in the description. And trust me, the memes alone are worth the click. All right, commercial break time. But the honest, transparent kind, I promise. Blowfin's crypto exchange sponsors this particular video with the affiliate link that's in the description down below. And it scores you a welcome bonus while tossing a few coins into the channel's kind of coffers, if you will. So I can keep the over-caffeinating myself for research marathons. So for full disclosure, using that link directly supports the show here. And I appreciate every single sign up more than my plants appreciate my kind of finally remembering to at least water them. But there's good news there. This one right here, it's plastic, so I don't have to remember. Now, let's kind of land the plane. The Hidden Road acquisition. It isn't just another shiny headline. It's a roadmap. Pun absolutely intended. So how Ripple kind of plans to widen itself into institutional finance in a way that sidesteps the friction of traditional corridors? Well, whether XRP hits $3.50 or rockets past $10, the real story here is going to be utility. Every institutional player that realizes seconds, fast settlements, is no longer sci-fi, they will actually accelerate adoption in ways that our spreadsheets can barely even model. And for those kind of following along at home, that means that you've got a front row seat to the next potential evolution of cross-border settlement. So next time that someone at a barbecue tells you that crypto is dead, you need to ask them how their bank wire transfer is doing. Did then kind of mention that they newly acquired brokerage is actually about to push trillions of dollars, through a decentralized ledger for frictions and fractions of a cent, right? And a penny. Now, you got to watch their eyebrows shoot up faster than an Aussie kangaroo on a trampoline. And here is my final thought for today, right? Markets are going to reward narratives that blend real-world traction with visionary potential. Right? Ripple buying Hidden Road, it blends both the, at least in spectacular fashion, right? Because there will be, will there be bumps? And there absolutely will be, right? Will regulators tossing some curveballs? You're going to absolutely guarantee it. I'm sure that you will. You can bet on it, right? But if we've learned anything from crypto over the last decade, it's that innovation doesn't politely wait for permission slips. It just barrels ahead, and the rest of the world just simply sprints to catch up.